At least 12 people were killed in a Russian missile and drone attack on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, prompting a rare rebuke from US President Donald Trump.
As the Pope's funeral approaches, Euronews spoke to the chief rabbi of Rome and the relationship they shared.
India and Pakistan have both revoked visas for each other as escalation between the two countries grows following the deadly attack in Kashmir.
Rescue teams in Kyiv cleared rubble and recovered bodies after a massive Russian strike killed at least 12 people and wounded more than 90 in the Ukrainian capital. The overnight attack came as weeks of peace negotiations seemed to be reaching a breaking point, but with no agreement in sight. In a social media post, US President Donald Trump condemned the attack as unnecessary and badly timed.
Це дійсно геноцид проти українського народу, це геноцид проти кожної конкретної української сім'ї. Це те, що винищує націю як морально, так і фізично. І я дуже хочу, щоб такого ніколи, ніде в світі не ставалося. І щоб обіцянки наших партнерів, обіцянки наших прекрасних друзів із-за кордону, щоб вони були не тільки обіцянками, а щоб це дійсно була та підтримка, якої ми варті.
Вот это типа перемирия, которое было на Пасху, это было просто, чтобы накопить силы, и сегодня вы же видели, сколько сегодня летело и сюда, и по Украине.
Trump's blunt message comes just hours after he criticized the Ukrainian president on the same platform. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he would cut short his official trip to South Africa and return home after the strike. He added that Ukraine had agreed to a US proposed ceasefire 44 days ago, a first step toward peace. But Russian attacks, he said, have not stopped.
Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars have been fighting against Russian occupation and annexation of Crimea since the very beginning of Russian invasion in 2014. The chairman of the Crimean Tatar Mejlis told Euronews as he recalls how Ukraine's international partners were asking Crimean citizens not to provoke Russia.
Всі наші партнери, союзники тоді виступали з позиції, що не треба провокувати Росію, що вони разом з українською державою обов'язково знайдуть форми і шляхи, як тоді говорили, розв'язання цього кризису. Я цитую те, що говорили мені, я був тоді в окупованому Криму. Той, хто докіряє нам, що ми не здійснили спротив, я думаю, що треба згадати трусливу позицію власних держав, які виступали гарантами безпеки української держави в межах Будапештського меморандуму.
Commenting on Donald Trump's claim that Crimea was, quote, handed over to Russia without a shot being fired, unquote, Chubarov says it is both false and disrespectful.
Це велика зневага до і українських військових, які були вбиті перші дні захоплення. Протягом найближчих місяців з моменту окупації у травні, в червні почали насильницькі викрадання наших молодих людей. Ми їх потім знаходили деяких вбитими, деяких до цього дня ми не можемо знайти, ми не знаємо, де вони. Говорити про те, що, мовляв, Крим було взято без жодного пострілу або без жодної жертви, це просто зневажати і людьми, які були в тій ситуації, і просто зізнаватися у своєму просто незнанні тих подій.
Donald Trump has increased pressure on Kyiv regarding territorial concessions from Ukraine, which could allegedly include recognizing the annexation of Crimea, the idea Kyiv and Crimean Tatars have repeatedly rejected.
Around 170 foreign delegations are due to arrive in the Vatican for Saturday's funeral. Among the attendees are US President Donald Trump, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, French President Emmanuel Macron, and many others. Also attending is the Chief Rabbi of Rome. We had the opportunity to speak with him about his relationship with the late Pope and the evolving dialogue between the Catholic Church and Judaism.
Momenti di disaccordo non sono mancati, ma questo fa appunto parte del dialogo, perché il dialogo significa confrontare opinioni differenti e posizioni differenti, perché se no è pura retorica. Ecco, allora e noi non siamo più con la bocca chiusa, nel senso che se ci sono cose, ma anche dall'altra parte, che non vanno bene secondo noi o secondo loro, ce le diciamo francamente e apertamente. L'importante è che ci sia rispetto e disponibilità all'ascolto.
As Saturday is a day for Shabbat, the rabbi will walk to the funeral as using a car is not allowed. And we'll have to wait for the conclave to elect the next pope to see how the dialogue between the two faiths evolves. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in the Vatican.
Hundreds of foreign delegations are expected at the Vatican for Pope Francis's funeral on Saturday as part of Italy's security plan. Police are currently patrolling the streets around St. Peter's Basilica, where the Pope has been moved for 3 days of public mourning. On Saturday, thousands of Catholics as well as religious and political leaders from around the world are expected to attend his funeral. Security mechanisms including anti-drone weapons and a no-fly zone patrolled by fighter jets are currently being used across Rome and in the skies above the Italian capital. Pope Francis has broken tradition by asking not to be buried at the Vatican, but in a simple tomb at the Papal Basilica of St. Mary Major, where he frequently prayed.
The Polish president, Andrzej Duda, thinks that Ukraine will have to compromise to put an end to the war. In an exclusive interview with Euronews, he emphasized that there is no one outside Donald Trump who could stop Russia. This coming as the United States have called on Ukraine to accept a peace deal that will allow Russia to keep some of its territorial gains. However, Duda insists both parts will have to make concessions for peace to be achieved.
To musi być kompromis. To znaczy de facto ten pokój powinien moim osobistym zdaniem sprowadzać się do tego, że żadna ze stron nie będzie mogła mówić, że wygrała tą wojnę. Bo każda ze stron w jakimś sensie będzie musiała ustąpić. No Ukraina też w jakimś sensie będzie musiała ustąpić, bo tak prawdopodobnie się to stanie. W jakim zakresie? Mnie jest trudno na tym etapie odpowiedzieć.
When it comes to tariffs, he explained that Europe will need to negotiate hard to reach a deal that benefits both sides, as he considers Trump an unusual politician.
Był właścicielem kasyn, więc to jest człowiek, który jest nauczony specyficznej gry biznesowej i ma swoje własne, od pewnie dziesięcioleci wypracowane twarde metody biznesowej gry, no, przenosi je do polityki i bardzo twardo gra. Ale ja właśnie tak na to patrzę, że to jest po prostu pewna rozgrywka biznesowa, którą do polityki wniósł w tej chwili prezydent Donald Trump i twardo ją prowadzi w swojej drugiej kadencji. Trzeba z nim negocjować. Trzeba z nim prowadzić twarde negocjacje, po prostu.
Duda gave the interview with the framework of the 3C summit, aiming at increasing security in international relations. You can watch the whole interview on Saturday in the Europe Conversation program.
People stood still as a 2-minute siren blared to mark Israel's annual Holocaust Remembrance Day. Each year, the commemoration falls on the 27th day in the month of Nisan on the Hebrew calendar. Buses and cars halted on streets and highways, and Israelis stepped out of their vehicles to stand in silence in remembrance of the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Meanwhile, in Dizengoff Square in Tel Aviv, relatives of hostages held pictures of their loved ones while the siren was wailing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other high-ranking officials laid wreaths at Yad Vashem, the National Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. Also, various ceremonies and memorials took place in schools and community centers, and TV and radio stations played Holocaust-themed programs throughout the day. India revoked visas and Pakistan suspended trade as escalation between the two nuclear-armed neighbors grows following the deadly attack in Kashmir on Tuesday. Indian authorities said all visas issued to Pakistani nationals will be revoked with effect from Sunday. This means that all Pakistanis in India must leave the country by then. India also said it would cut the number of diplomatic staff and announced they would suspend its historic water-sharing treaty with Pakistan. Islamabad has responded angrily to the decision. In retaliation, Pakistan closed its airspace to Indian carriers. They also cancelled visas for most Indians. It comes after the deadly attack in a town in the Himalayas in Kashmir on Tuesday. Gunmen had opened fire on a group of domestic tourists, killing at least 26 people. The government claimed the attack had cross-border links to Pakistan. However, Pakistan denied any connection to the attack.
China has launched 3 more astronauts into space, making a further step forward in the country's ambitions for a crewed mission to the moon and to explore Mars. The Shenzhou 20 spaceship took off successfully around 5 p.m. local time at the Yingquan Satellite Launch Center on Thursday. It is headed for China's Tiangong space station, where astronauts will conduct medical science, maintenance, and install new equipment, says Beijing.